Crashes are a common sight in Formula One races. You can expect about 1 or 2 wrecks every race, from single cars slipping on wet pavement to multi-car pileups. Anytime you put 20 vehicles hitting speeds over 200 miles per hour together, there's sure to be some accidents. So when Renault driver Nelson Piquet crashed into a wall during the 14th lap of the Singapore Grand Prix in 2008, most people accepted his explanation of it being a simple mistake. But a year later, the crash was all anyone in Formula One racing could talk about, and the man, Flavio Briatore, was the star of the story.
I never, maybe I am. But I want to be in this business for a long time. And,
We're going to break down this action-packed scene for you. The Crashgate scandal of 2008 that resulted in one of the most influential men in Formula One racing, Flavio Briatore, being banned from the sport. Briatore's notoriety began long before the Singapore Grand Prix. Flavio Briatore, nicknamed Tribula for his willingness to do whatever it takes to get what he wants, started as an assistant to a mafia-connected businessman in Cuneo, Italy. After his boss was killed and the business went bankrupt, Briatore moved to Milan and became friends with Luciano Benetton, the founder of the Benetton clothing empire. Briatore was convicted of fraud and skipped town for the Virgin Islands, where he reconnected with Benetton. Benetton appointed Briatore to run his expanding chain of clothing stores in the US, which made Briatore wildly wealthy as he pocketed a portion of each franchise fee. In 1986, Benetton took over the Toleman F1 team and hired Flavio Briatore as commercial director. It pays to have friends in high places, right? Briatore eventually became the managing director and brought in experts like Tom Welkinshaw and Ross Brawn to help him lead the team to win the Drivers' World Championships in 1994 and 1995 with Michael Schumacher. But the team's success was short-lived as Schumacher and other key figures left for Ferrari at the end of 1995. The competition will never stop, will it? Briatore bought the Ligier F1 team in 1995, but sold it to Tom Wilkinshaw, keeping the Ligier's stock of Renault V10 engine. Briatore was let go from Benetton after a mediocre season. When Renault announced they were ending their engine supply role in F1 that same year, Briatore's company reached an agreement with Mechachrome to prepare engines under the Supertech name and distribute them to teams without engines, including Benetton. In 2000, Renault bought the Benetton F1 team and returned Briatore as the managing director and team principal. They added Jenson Button to the team in 2001, but Briatore wasn't impressed with his performance and let him go at the end of 2002, replacing him with Fernando Alonso. Alonso then went on to win the World Drivers' Championship in 2005 and 2006, and to accompany those victories was Renault, who also won the Constructors' Championship in those years.
The young Spaniard, and Fernando Alonso wins his first Grand Prix, and he becomes...
Flavio Briatore had a lot going on outside of F1 racing too. A restaurant in London, a nightclub in Sardinia, a beach club in Tuscany, and a fancy vacation spot in Kenya called the Colony Club. He was a one-person party machine. He also launched a fashion brand called Billionaire Italia and bought himself a fancy yacht, the 207-foot-long Force Blue. In 2007, he became the chairman of London's soccer club Queen's Park Rangers, which he co-owned. But Briatore seemed most at home at an F1 track, where he was known as a flamboyant figure with a knack for finding talent. One of his best friends was Fernando Alonso, a Spanish driver who caught Briatore's attention when he won the Euro Open by Nissan at 17. He spent 4 years with Briatore on the Renault team, shattering records and becoming Formula One's youngest double world champion before being lured away by McLaren. But repeated scuffles with his teammate ended his 3-year contract early, and he signed back on with Renault just in time for the 2008 season.
Felipe Massa, it's back-to-back wins, Singapore and Japan, for Fernando Alonso and Renault. He thoroughly deserves it once again, the drive of a great...
Alongside Alonso that year on the Renault team was Nelson Piquet Jr., son of 3-time F1 world champion Nelson Piquet. Many people speculated that Piquet was chosen for the seat because he didn't pose a threat to Alonso, who was Renault's top priority. The 2008 season started with many disappointments for Piquet: crashes, non-finishes, and mechanical failures. As the Singapore Grand Prix approached, there was mounting pressure for Piquet to perform. The Singapore Grand Prix was the first ever Formula One event held at night, a move designed to cater to the race's sizable European audience. The street circuit track was lit by nearly 1,600 bulbs and covered just over 3 miles. Drivers would race 61 laps. The race was the 15th in the season and was scheduled for September 28th.
Max Verstappen once again right on Sebastian Vettel's tail, and Verstappen certainly wasn't caught a napping at the...
The first practice runs ended with McLaren's Lewis Hamilton setting the fastest time after many drivers struggled with problems at the circuit's final corner. But the second and third sessions were dominated by Alonso, who took Hamilton's top spot from him in both sessions. But qualifying sessions didn't go nearly as well for the Renault team. Piquet was eliminated in the first session, and Alonso early in the second after his car suffered a fuel feed problem before he could set a lap time. On race day, Alonso sat in the 15th place in the starting grid, with Piquet next in 16th. Piquet spun out at one turn during the warm-up lap but recovered quickly. By lap 12,
Felipe Massa on the back of Bruno Senna seems very close as they get out of turn 5 of Massa.
with Ferrari's Felipe Massa in the lead, Alonso became the first driver to pull into the pits. He had started the race with a light fuel load, hoping to gain an advantage, allowing him to pass the racers in front of him. It was an unusual choice since most F1 drivers who qualify outside the top 10 go for heavier fuel loads from the start so they could take one less pit stop.
Third place. Alonso won from the pole, led every lap, and set fastest lap.
During the stop, Alonso also switched from super soft tires to soft compound ones and rejoined the race, now at the back of the field. Just 2 laps later, Piquet spun out again at the same turn he had in the warm-up lap, but he could not recover this time. His car slammed into the wall at turn 17, one of the places in the circuit where there was no crane nearby. The safety car deployed, and the pit lane closed until all cars had been bunched up behind the safety car. Lead cars lost their advantage since they had to enter the race at the back of the field after their pit stop. Some drivers were forced to take the 10-second penalty for pitting during the closure to avoid running out of fuel. Most leading cars ended up behind Alonso, with those still ahead of him forced to pit as soon as the lane opened. Massa's Ferrari was released with the fuel hose still attached, causing the team's mechanics to run the length of the pit to remove it and earning Massa a 10-second penalty. Alonso took his second and final pit stop in lap 42, but re-entered the race in the lead and managed to maintain the position to earn Renault the win. As Flavio Briatore joined Alonso at the podium, the racer credited his success to strategy and luck.
Okay, played a part in it.
Piquet commented that he was disappointed with his race but happy for his team. Briatore maintained in the following days that Alonso's performance was brilliant driving aided by a lucky safety car lap. There were a few murmurs about the likelihood of that luck, but no critic wanted to make a public statement about a renowned racing team willingly sacrificing the safety of one of their drivers. The following year, Piquet was dropped by Renault after failing to acquire any points in the first 10 races of the season. But Piquet did not intend to leave quietly. Within a month of his departure, he told everyone that he had been ordered to crash during the Singapore Grand Prix to give Alonso an advantage. And he said the order came from Flavio Briatore. The FIA opened an investigation into the claims, and Renault was charged with conspiracy and race fixing. Piquet was granted immunity in return for his testimony, and Renault did not contest the allegations, earning a 2-year probation. Alonso was cleared of any wrongdoing since the FIA found no evidence that he or his mechanics knew anything about the planned crash. But Briatore and Renault chief engineer Pat Simmons were forced to resign, and Briatore was banned from Formula One indefinitely. The Daily Mirror would later describe the FIA's ruling as the harshest sanction ever imposed on an individual in the history of motorsport. Flavio Briatore maintained his innocence and sued the FIA in French courts to clear his name. In 2010, the French tribunal overturned his ban and awarded him €15,000 in compensation. The court ruled that Briatore had not been allowed to argue his case during the FIA inquiry.
The time was difficult to have a good driver to drive me for Benetton because we are a t-shirt maker. Nobody believed we are serious, At one point, we have a
and the ban had been decided based on anonymous testimony. The FIA appealed the court's decision, but ultimately settled with Briatore out of court. The former Renault team principal agreed to abstain from working in Formula One until 2013. Despite being the one to benefit the most from the crash, Alonso's career continued untarnished. He went on to race with Ferrari, McLaren, and Alpine, and currently drives on the Aston Martin team. Nelson Piquet, meanwhile, was never offered another Formula One seat. While most now agree the crash was planned in some capacity, teams were wary of taking on a driver who could potentially accuse them of cheating. Piquet crossed the pond to America, racing in NASCAR for several seasons before joining the Formula E circuit. He's currently competing full-time in the Brazilian Stock Car Pro Series. As for Flavio Briatore, the supposed mastermind behind the crash that ended careers, shook the trust of Formula One fans, and left FIA red in the face, he's doing just fine after a 2021 scare with COVID-19 that left him hospitalized. He still holds many business interests with restaurants, nightclubs, and clothing lines that employ over 1,000 people. And in 2022, he returned to Formula One for the first time since the Crashgate scandal, this time as an ambassador in charge of entertainment. Sometimes, it seems, nice guys finish last. What are your thoughts on the alleged planned crash during the 2008 Singapore Grand Prix? Do you think it was planned? Well, we know what is planned but won't land you in court. The video's on our channel. To check out more F1 or racing footage, head on over now.